So more tough talk for the president from a former member of his cabinet. Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta now says ISIS was able to flourish because President Obama didn't take action in Syria sooner. Here he is. As the conflict in Syria grinds on, Panetta says he, along with other members of the administration, supported arming those moderate rebels back in 2012, but that President Obama refused to do so. Here he is on 60 Minutes last night.
The real key was how can we develop a leadership group among the opposition that would be able to take control. And my view was to have leverage to do that, we would have to provide the weapons and the training in order for them to really be willing to work with us in that effort.
But with virtually his entire national security team unanimous on this, that's not the decision the president made.
I think the president's concern, and I understand it, was that he had a fear that if we started providing weapons, we wouldn't know where those weapons would wind up. My view was you have to begin somewhere. I think in part we paid a price for not doing that in what we see happening with ISIS.
Leon Panetta saying you have to begin somewhere to combat this group. Let's bring in Liz Cheney, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and a Fox News contributor. Liz, good morning. Good to have you here. You know, I want to ask you the first question that I have good morning, we have a little bit of a delay just so people understand at home. You have Leon Panetta, you have Dempsey, you have Hillary Clinton, and you have Petraeus, all advising the president, we now know, to help out the Free Syrian Army, that the moment was crucial, that they needed to help then. So my question is, who was on the president's side? Who was convincing him otherwise in the White House?
You know, Martha, it seems like you've got a situation where the president stands alone. And, you know, he alone among everyone we've heard now speak out seems to think that somehow, you know, he's prepared, you've got to say, to let ISIS prevail, sadly. And I say that because the strategy that he's laid out is wholly insufficient. You had just last week on Thursday and Friday the chairman of the Joint Chiefs talking about the extent to which training now, arming and training the Syrian rebels to have them act as the ground forces is going to take, you know, 1 to 2 years. We don't have 1 to 2 years. We've got to defeat ISIS now by delaying, by allowing ISIS to grow, by refusing to leave any American forces behind. President Obama clearly created a situation in which America's enemies have been strengthened.
I mean, you have to wonder if you're going to go against the top people you've put into your own administration to advise you on defense, and you say no to them, that you disagree with them, you have to in some ways wonder why you would hold on to any of them if you're disagreeing with everything that they're saying. And, you know, at this point, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is the only one of those 4 that is still there. You know, politically, Liz, what's happening here? Do you think that with this book and with Leon Panetta speaking out, we're starting to see people put the president at arm's length and tell their own story?
You know, I think you've got a number of people, in this case on both sides of the aisle, and also in the United States military, who care deeply about this nation and who are very concerned. You know, you've also got the Army Chief of Staff, General Odierno, saying again last week that he believes he's got grave concerns about the size of the defense cuts that are being made. I think it's an unprecedented situation, Martha, frankly, particularly when you look at the active duty members of our armed forces who are speaking out because they are so concerned both about the president's lack of willingness to say, look, all options are on the table to defeat ISIS. Our currently serving members of the armed forces, as well as some who have retired, understand you can't say to the enemy, listen, we will never put ground forces in. You should never tell the enemy what you will or won't do. And their concern is such that they're speaking out publicly, which I'm not sure you've seen, certainly in recent history here in the United States.
No, I think you're so right about that. I mean, to see current military professionals, not people who are retired, speaking out against the commander-in-chief is an extraordinary situation to find ourselves in. And you also go back to what Leon Panetta said, Liz, about his urging the president to leave 8 to 10,000 in troop levels in Iraq because he felt that it was going to be very important for us to have eyes and ears on the ground, and he also felt that it was going to give us a closer tie to Maliki and to continue to keep him, you know, sort of where we wanted him, so to speak.
Exactly, Martha. And you have a situation now where we know that the military commanders at the time, they asked for 20,000 forces to remain in Iraq. The president said no. They asked for 10,000. The president said no. Then he demanded that Maliki get any agreement approved by the Iraqi parliament. And in spite of the total chaos and the growing terror threat that you're seeing now in Obama-abandoned Iraq, the president says he will, in fact, pursue the same course in Afghanistan. And he's a man who, frankly, seems unwilling to take advice of the people who know, seems unwilling to do what's necessary to defend the nation, seems unwilling to watch the example of the devastation of his policies and change course as a result. And we're in a very serious situation when you've got those members of our armed forces saying, wait a second, we've got to have a strategy that will defeat ISIS, and this one won't.
I go back to who's on the president's side in these discussions, and I look at a comment by Ben Rhodes, National Security Advisor, who said, well, we didn't see a plan, essentially, he said, that could tip the balance against Assad. So I think what he's saying is that the Pentagon presented us with this plan, but we didn't think it was going to work. So my question again is, if you won't take the advice from the people that you've put in place to advise you on these things, shouldn't you be, completely changing the people that you have in those leadership positions?
Well, you would think so. But, you've got a fundamental problem with this president, which is that he came into office with an understanding, a belief, an ideology about how the world works and about America's role in the world, and a belief that America has generally not been a force for good. You can look at his own words, and a determination to reduce America's leadership in the world. And now you've got, across the board, reality crashing up against this president's ideology. And I think, frankly, in some instances, he's just flummoxed. He doesn't know how to handle that situation. He's not willing to accept it. I think there are enablers inside the White House. I think certainly Ben Rhodes is one of them. Valerie Jarrett is another one. He's got political people around him who should not have a role in our national security decisions, but who seem, frankly, to have his ear in a way that the people that actually know what's happening on the ground don't.
Liz Cheney, thank you very much. Always good to see you.